Guardians of the Galaxy, Volume 3, big movie out of Marvel, perhaps the last chance at making a profit for the next year and a half before Deadpool 3 comes out. It's hard to believe that Marvel has fallen so far, and yet that is the case. We find Starlord, Rocket, Gamora, and the others. Yet still, this movie has managed to have a hold that we have not seen since Spider-Man No Way Home. What is it about these characters that people love? What is causing them to return, even as the MCU falters in every other way? We'll dive straight into it, as well as talking about fastx and don't forget about Indy in just a moment. And folks, we are back. Happy Saturday, happy weekend. We have made it. Woohoo! It's a beautiful day, and we're so happy to have you here with us. Joining me to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy and these other films, we have Eric, a guest who has been here, but it's been a while, Eric. I am so happy that you've made it back. Welcome to the channel once again.
Thank you, Pro. Glad to be here.
Fantastic. Now, folks, as we get into this, if you like content, like it, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms when you click it. We're talking about that notification bell. All right, let's dive straight into our conversation, starting off with the Weekend Box Forecast. This coming to us from Box Office Pro, our friends over there. We love them just because their name ends with Pro as well. Sean Robbins, the writer on this one. And it's talking about fastx. It's important for us to mention this film simply because it's going to do most of its work internationally. It's also going to do much of its work internationally in places where the percentage it will bring back into the coffers, well, not going to be great. And so it's going to have some big numbers, but those big numbers may not be fully accurate in telling us how it's really doing. Now, what's really interesting is when we get down here to the information about Guardians of the Galaxy, because this is a film that's going up against another major franchise coming at it against Fast and the Furious. And here's what it says about it. Meanwhile, the continued legs of Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 shouldn't be discounted even with the new competition. James Gunn's trilogy Caper posted one of the best MCU holds ever, and the best since Black Panther 2018, with just a 47.6% decline in its second weekend. The pick faced no competition and retained premium screens. But strong word of mouth is clearly in play for the crowd-pleasing, humorous, and emotional send-off, and that's where it takes us. We are finding out that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 domestically is looking at holding on to $29 to $35 million, and internationally, it may be able to pull in a full $60 million, which would be a tremendous number for the movie. But what is going on? We thought that everybody hated Marvel. And we've had some people say, Eric, we've had some people question me saying, well, now I thought you said this movie was not going to make money, and yet here it is doing this fantastic hold. And the answer to that is simple. It's probably not going to make money. This movie needs to make something like $800 million in order to find a profit. And unfortunately, it's looking right now like it's going to wind up somewhere between 650 and 750, short of the number it needs. And yet, this looked like it was going to have a disastrous first weekend. Instead, because it has managed to hold on to a great percentage, but starting off at a poor beginning, it's actually legging out to be, well, better than what we had anticipated, but still not quite where it needs to be. And so, Eric, I've brought you into this discussion to talk about what it is about these characters that's drawing people back so strongly. So much else of the MCU has been deemed not worthy of viewership. Ant-Man Quantumania was just an absolutely abysmal showing at theaters. And yet people are going in droves to see Rocket, to see Starlord, to see Groot. Eric, let's talk about these characters and why they matter to people so much. Let's start off just
the finger on the right point, in that it's the characters that are drawing the audience back. So much of Marvel is about these superpowered, overpowered characters that do these amazing things. But in the Guardians of the Galaxy, what we're seeing are average people coming out of really broken situations that find themselves in extraordinary situations, and rather than running from it, they step on up. And that's the kind of character that a lot of us identify with. So
let's start on that first, because I think you're exactly right. I'm looking at the reviews for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny and how, I mean, it's just terrible, just terribly received, even at a time when the early access media, they're the ones who are getting to watch it. So they have every vested interest in giving it a positive review. They can't even do it. And it seems to me that part of the reason that they can't do it is because Indiana Jones is not treated as the character he once was. Yet with James Gunn and his treatment of Guardians of the Galaxy, he seems to care deeply about these characters. And so you have Star-Lord, who does not seem to be subverted. You have Rocket, who does not seem to be subverted. They stay consistent to who they are. And they are, this is one of my favorite words, of course, but they are archetypal characters, or archetypal, depending on how you want to pronounce it. In the case of Star-Lord, you have a character who is highly promiscuous, a ladies' man who goes bouncing about island to island, woman to woman, and then he meets the woman of his dreams, who he does not know to even dream about, Gamora. And because he is overtaken with her, but not for the normal reasons, not for simply the lustful reasons, he settles down. And so this third film sees him now missing greatly, that missing piece that had finally come into his life. But Eric, you, I think, did not enjoy this movie as much as some. So can you walk us through what made the first two movies, in your viewpoint, so special that is missing in this third, even as people go to see it so often now?
So the things that I've really enjoyed about Guardians of the Galaxy is the fact that these are regular people that we can identify with. They are broken people who find that they fit better when they are in community with one another. They're people that have a redemption theme, and there are a lot of us that just mess up, and we want to believe that there's the ability to come back from even our worst of situations. All of that is tied into the characters of the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I love that about these different characters. I'd probably have a different take on Peter Quill than what you just described.
I would love to hear
Rather
that.
than finding the woman of his dreams, I'd say that Peter Quill found a purpose. He was a man of great potential that didn't have a purpose. But what he found in that first movie was a clear purpose, and then a community that he chose to be devoted to. And those things took a man that had all this energy, all this potential that wasn't going anywhere except for a self-serving purpose. And all of a sudden, he had a reason to sacrifice. He had a reason to serve others, and that brought out the best in him. And again, this is very true to life, is that we see a lot of young people today that have great potential, but no purpose. And they end up wasting that potential, and they end up having very dissatisfying lives because we all need a purpose that is greater than just living for self.
So let's talk about that for a moment. I think you're exactly right. It seems to resonate with people when they find a character who finds meaning and purpose in life, because what else are you going to do with your life other than have that? It's you're just meandering through space without any reason otherwise. But I'm curious, with Star-Lord finding that purpose and that meaning, and that resonating with young men particularly, do you think that young men are still yearning for more characters like that? Is that part of what we're seeing with this push into watching strongly paternal films, such as Top Gun Maverick, such as Avatar: The Way of Water, where people are going to watch strong male characters once more? Men have largely been slimed over the last few years. There's toxic masculinity, but there is no toxic femininity. Do you think that people are now yearning to go back to the ideals, the best that men can be?
I think that every man is created with that desire to give their life to a cause. And if they don't find that in real life, they look for it in fantasy.
It's a fantastic quote, by the way, Eric.
Or whether it's the fantasy of playing video games, they're looking for something that ties into that need to give their life to a cause.
So men, then, in your opinion, and perhaps women as well, who knows? We can talk about that in a moment. We can talk about the feminine side of this. But at least for men, you're saying that there's an innate need for sacrifice. Then it's not just about rights, what I'm owed in life, but it's about responsibility in life. It's what can I give up that justifies my existence. Is that right?
Yes, men are willing to lay down their life for something that they believe in. Or with Guardians of the Galaxy, they're willing to lay down their life for the people they believe in. If you pay close attention to the story, it isn't just the great need that is facing the world they're associated with. They really sacrifice for one another, and it's the devotion to their community, devotion to their friendship that calls out the very best in them. And we want something to draw out the best in us.
Okay, let's segue for a moment to Indiana Jones. I didn't tell you we were going to do this. I don't know if you love that franchise at all, but this ties into something that Lorne Connor, a frequent guest on the channel, people love Lorne. He is literally an encyclopedia incarnate for Star Wars. But Lorne was teaching me about Indiana Jones, and I try to know a lot about these franchises, but I'm no expert in the way that Lorne is when it comes to Indy. And he was teaching me this same exact thing that you're talking about, that his favorite Indiana Jones film is The Temple of Doom because chronologically it's the first film. It's not in terms of when it was produced, it's the second, but in terms of the placement of the narrative, it's the first. You get the idea. It's a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Sure.
And in that film, Indiana Jones starts off as someone who is not sacrificial. He is self-obsessed, self-absorbed, narcissistic. And then it's the children in the Temple of Doom who have been imprisoned and need his help. It's their cries that bring him to become the hero that will take place in the next two films, although we had already seen one. So that origin story, again, speaks to this need for masculine heroes to recognize the need to sacrifice. And maybe that's what's missing in this new Indiana Jones film. We've watched previews of it. We've seen clips of it. And he's just being nagged over and over, sort of emasculated. But that's not what happens in Guardians of the Galaxy. In Guardians of the Galaxy, these characters are treated in a way that is reverential to them. James Gunn created these characters and cares about them. Walk me through some of the other characters of Guardians of the Galaxy. What is it about them that resonates? So,
to tie into what you're saying about Indiana Jones, is that we see characters begin to develop. We see them becoming the better version of themselves, and we don't like to see somebody push reset and to take them backwards, so to speak. We want to continue to see them to grow into stronger and stronger characters.
Okay. Pause there, Eric. Pause there. I want to ask you about that. Okay, so one of the things that goes against that is that as characters age, there seems to be there are two different options that Hollywood producers, writers, directors have been going with. In the case of Tom Cruise with the Top Gun series, he decided to keep the character the same or even better and make him more mature, but not as physically impressive because he's older. But some of these other films, and you and I actually talked about this once before with Bill on the video, we discussed that there's another strategy out there, which is to take these characters. This is the Luke Skywalker strategy, where you take an aging male hero and you diminish him not only physically, but you also diminish him in terms of his desire to continue sacrificing for others. They make these people be embittered. Why do you think that is? Why do you think that some of these writers, some of these Hollywood producers and directors are taking that route versus what you're describing?
So I think that people that have learned the value of sacrifice don't go backwards. The people that have learned the value of investing in a community, building real strong friendships, which is what we see in Guardians of the Galaxy. They don't abandon their friendships. And that's why the Luke Skywalker character that you're talking about doesn't ring true to those who have spent their life watching these kinds of movies. They know that it is a artificial interpretation of his character, and it's not attractive. The reason I think that some writers do that is that they know that the actors are aging. The actors are expensive. They're not going to be able to continue the franchise with Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia and different ones that are dying and not available. And so they're trying to clear the decks and reset the storyline with younger actors.
Oh, that's a great point. It's a financial
start a new franchise rather than try to tear down the old characters.
What a fantastic point. It's a financial decision to destruct these characters and their character arcs in order to artificially reduce their interest with fans. It does not work, though. I love that point. I love this conversation thus far. However, let's dive into now what your issue was with the third film. Now, people are going in watching it. Some like it, some don't. I gave it an 8 out of 10 here. I thought the first 2 acts were not good and that the third act was quite strong. Tell me why you think the third film does not work versus the first 2 films.
So before I went to the theater this last week or whatever it was, I actually rewatched volumes 1 and 2, episodes 1 and 2, just to kind of keep it fresh in my mind. And I found myself again engaging with the characters, watching as they grow, watching as they built their relationships together. I thought it was just done in a wonderful way. And then I step into the theater that night, and it starts off with Peter Quill in a drunken stupor, all broken down and grieving the break in his relationship with Gamora. And I started to fear this was going to be that whole reset of his character, taking him back to a very disillusioned kind of place. I went into the movie wanting to see more growth in character, not seeing a retrograde character. And so I struggled a little bit with that. And my major observation, I was talking with my daughter afterwards. She went with me. My major observation is that it seemed to be a bunch of sketches, a bunch of action scenes that were loosely tied together with this origin story for Rocket. It was a nice origin story. The villain was a great villain. There were some great moments and some great quotes that I really enjoyed, but there wasn't the smooth storyline of self-sacrifice, of service to the community, of living for something that was greater than self. I didn't see all those themes that really made movies 1 and 2 really work for me. You're right. The third act, though, kind of tied it all together and allowed those characters to shine again. But again, I think that they're trying to set it up so that they can have a spin-off of different characters going and having their own movies, perhaps their own series apart from Guardians. And so, again, I think there were some financial things that were driving the plot line where I was just looking for a good story. The good story wasn't as clear as the first 2 movies.
Now, Eric, let's take a look at this time at what's going on with this movie in terms of the box office. This is the domestic numbers. Now, you can see this film did not open in the way that Disney had hoped for. Very poor. In fact, this was edging towards an Ant-Man Quantumania situation, which would have been disastrous. And you can see also that some people were critical a little bit of Valiant Renegade's reporting based on that first Monday when it looked like this is going to drop 70%. But you can see this line actually dipped below the predictive graph area, the predictive range at the beginning, which was really what scared a lot of people and made them think, oh my gosh, there's no way. Surely it can't drop that much. And Guardians has done a good job actually now of rising up. It's in the bottom quarter of the predicted range, but it could pull up into the halfway point, which is really something for this film, considering where it started. It started extremely poorly again. Now, I have a thought for why I think this film is doing well, why people are suggesting that others go see it. And I think it's separate from the issues that you found. I think what you're talking about, that those are true. And I think it's a real flaw with the film, and the film would be better if they had done something, recognizing that Star-Lord needed to continue to progress forward, recognizing that these Guardians needed to see themselves as the Guardians of the Galaxy, not just trying to save Rocket alone. But here's what I think is going on that's making this poignant with people, and then I want this is going to be an easy one for you in terms of the question. But what I'm seeing here is I am seeing a Rocket character that is resonating deeply with people. A character that was not given that type of focus in the prior films. But in this film, people are seeing someone who has been greatly damaged by the things he has gone through. And I think that in our society, many people can identify with a very broken upbringing, perhaps not to the degree that Rocket has been through. But there are people who have been in abusive homes. There are people who have had extremely broken relationships. And Rocket at the end of the film finds family. And I think that's the message that is driving people to go support this film. I think that they are seeing in Rocket themselves. And so my question to you, Eric, is what can people do if they go and see this film and they self-identify as Rocket? They say, my life has been extraordinarily broken for so long, and I, too, want to find community. I want to find meaningful friendship relationships and familial relationships, just like this character. What would you say to people trying to overcome a very hard past?
So I thought that they handled Rocket's story very well in this movie. The pivotal point, in my opinion, was when Rocket recognized that he was self sabotaging the relationships. He was stealing batteries that he didn't need. And he had this interesting scene, this conversation with Peter Quill's character that talked about somebody else that was self-sabotaging relationships. And it was that aha moment you could see with Rocket, where he recognized that here I am trying to push people away and realizing that because they love me, they're not leaving me. And he was able to relax in the fact that I am loved, I'm valued for who I am and not just what I do. I think the most important thing that people can do is find that group of friends that they can love without challenging, without testing, without allowing their fears of being rejected to sabotage their current relationships, and instead choose to just pour themselves into building toward healthy, sustainable relationships. You can find that in shared activities. You can find that in a faith community. You can find that in a parent-teacher kind of association, or working with young people. There's all kinds of places where you can form a community. The question becomes, instead of being critical when things don't go right, instead of pushing people away, are we going to put those little irritants aside and just choose to really build toward what's best in one another's relationships?
Fantastic points. It seems to me that the negativity that we see from fans towards franchises has to do with inverting that. In the case of the Indiana Jones movie, it seems that his goddaughter is constantly nagging at him, being critical of him, complaining about him in a way that inverts the hero and turns the person who has done very little into the person who has all the glory. And we've seen that time and time again in various movies. And I'm glad that the Guardians didn't do that, even if it did not do so well in some areas with Volume 3. I think it's the weakest of the three movies, but I think there's something to be said about what is drawing people in. I think it has to do with all of these characters being flawed. They're all broken in some way. That's what we get to at the end, is they're all seeking to find the thing that will help fill the gaps in their lives. And yet, despite their brokenness, they're able to come together and work as a team together. And I think that's symbolic of the family. And that, I think, is what is causing people to go and see this film and support these characters, even in spite of it not being the best of the three. Eric, final thoughts on the things we talked about, or anything else you'd like to add to this before we wrap up?
I just hope that Disney continues to produce movies where people can relate, tell a story that challenges people to become better themselves. These weaker characters that have been produced in recent years really aren't attractive, but the characters that challenge us to personally sacrifice, the storylines that challenge us to love our families and to sacrifice for the good of others, they challenge us to become better people. And that's the power of good storytelling, is that it helps us want to be the best version of ourselves as well.
Eric, is that what the entire concept of storytelling is about when you boil it down? Is that why we do this? All cultures all over the world do this. Is this why?
If you want stories to last, then that's exactly why we do it. It appeals to that deeper need to be a better person. And so we use our stories to give us a focus, a direction of where we need to grow personally. If we're just telling a story about action, it's the same story repeated over and over and over again. But if you're challenging people to be better people, then that's something that we're drawn to, because innately we desire to be the better person.
Perhaps then the better story is that which points us to be even better. Perhaps the higher the goal of the story in terms of where we could go and what we could be and who we could be following and what we should be focused on, then perhaps that makes all the better thing to pay attention to, listen to, and enjoy. Eric, I have loved our conversation today. I hope it has been beneficial and helpful to others. We're trying to identify how entertainment works. We're trying to identify how it is that we rank order entertainment. Why is it that Indiana Jones is doing so poorly in the minds of reviewers? Why is it that Top Gun Maverick did so well? There's something to it. Too many people are having too many of the same reactions for there not to be a mechanism by which we're all coming to those conclusions. And so, folks, that's what we're here to do. And if it helps us all be better people, well, then the conversation has went in the right place. So, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, subscribe, and you can stick it to the algorithms when you click it. We're talking about the notification bell. This is not a conversation between two people. No, this is with all of you. Please, we would love to read your comments. We read them, we respond. Drop a comment down below and let us know what you think. Are we onto something? Are we off? Either way, we'd love to hear from you. And if you're not yet a member, for the price of a soda, you can hop in and get even more exclusive content just like this. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
I just found out how to get WDW Pro's information, where he gets his sources. I can't believe he uses. Wilton!
What?
We got a job to do. It's easy to hack into WDW Pro's computer.
You're kidding me. That's awesome. You know any other stuff?
Yeah, just Jonas Campbell told me.
Sweet.
Said Pro underpaid him or something.
A few minutes later.
There. Oh, awesome. Whatever. All I gotta do is
Whoa.
hack into this thing. It's gonna be so easy.
Yeah, this isn't
All
a
right,
hack.
grab this picture over here.
Leave it to me.
Oh, no, Wilson.
Job done. What?
No, all we had to do was use the picture because he uses face unlock. Now we gotta go to thatpartplace.com and sub to him and his team on YouTube.
Oh, well, I already did that because I'm smart.